I'm here again with author Lynne Raimondo. We are talking about her recent book, Dante's Dilemma. So you have this series, you have a blind protagonist, and he's not really a detective per se, right?
No, he's not. He's a forensic psychiatrist. And so he is called into court in cases that involve an area where the jury or the judge can use help, technical help, of a psychiatrist in deciding an issue. Say, for example, is this individual competent to stand trial? In my first book, the accused is a developmentally disabled young man, and Mark testifies at what is essentially a bail hearing. It's the preliminary hearing situation. His job is to tell the court whether this young man was competent enough to waive his Miranda rights.
And that triggers the rest of the book.
It triggers the rest of the book. Mark comes to regret very much his testimony in that proceeding.
See, I think this sounds fascinating. This was in part because you knew the law and you had been in plenty of courtrooms in your day. But you say that the writing of the law, actually, you had to unlearn that to write a novel.
I did, to a degree, because and I'm not talking about dumbing my writing down, but being sure not to be overly technical, to use some techniques that lawyers quite honestly don't use, like mixing up longer sentences with shorter sentences, using sentence fragments. That's something, a big no-no for a lawyer in a brief would be to use a sentence fragment, and yet, as both a reader and a writer, I think sentence fragments can heighten tension. Can call readers' attention to a particular facet of the story. So there are ways to kind of mix up your writing as a fiction writer that you can't really do as a lawyer.
But you still you drew upon what you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it was very important to me. You know, you don't want to replicate exactly what goes on in a courtroom, because a lot of what happens in a courtroom is deadly dull.
I watched the Aaron Hernandez trial, and if a murder trial can be boring.
Yeah, right. So you want to keep it interesting, but by the same token, I feel it's important to try to impart some level of realism into courtroom scenes. There are so many times when I'm reading a legal thriller and I want to just throw it across the room because this would not happen. And you don't want to be in the room with my husband and me watching Law and Order, because we're there making all the objections that the lawyers on the show didn't.
Very good point. That's the beauty of your experience.